Hello, I'm Judy Woodruff, and I am delighted to be your host today for a special program celebrating the 2020 and 2021 recipients of the Carl and Susan Bolch Prize for the Rule of Law. The prize is awarded by the Bolch Judicial Institute at Duke Law School, and it honors individuals who have demonstrated extraordinary dedication to upholding, protecting, and advancing the rule of law. Our honorees today are two remarkable judges whose commitment to the rule of law spans decades and continents. Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke of the South Africa Constitutional Court and Chief Justice Margaret H. Marshall of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. In this hour, we will hear from David F. Levy, Director of the Bolch Judicial Institute, our distinguished award recipients, and some special guests, including the Honorable Anthony M. Kennedy, a retired Justice of the United States Supreme Court and the first recipient of the Bolch Prize for the Rule of Law.
Hello and welcome to the 2021 celebration of the Bolch Prize for the Rule of Law. I'm Carrie Abrams, Dean of Duke Law School. It's a privilege to welcome you to our campus and to join us in honoring two judges whose lives and careers exemplify the highest ideals of the legal profession, Chief Justice Margaret Marshall and Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke. The mission of the Bolch Judicial Institute at Duke Law School is to better the human condition by studying and promoting the rule of law. One way to do this is to honor and highlight those who have devoted their lives to protecting the rule of law. In learning about the work that so many judges do to protect the law, we can all better appreciate the value of an impartial judiciary and a rule of law that is created by and serves the people. At Duke Law School, we aim to prepare students to become productive and responsible leaders in the legal profession, in our nation, and in the world. I can think of no better examples for our students to learn from and emulate than Chief Justice Marshall and Deputy Chief Justice Moseneke. In different ways and on different continents, each of them has defended human rights and led their communities toward the fulfillment of the promises of their constitutions. I hope we can see their examples as a call to all of us to do our part to ensure that our workplaces, schools, communities, systems, and countries do all that is necessary to uphold the dignity and equality of all people. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Dean Abrams. I'd like to take a moment to tell you more about our honorees today, two brilliant judges who in ways both ordinary and extraordinary changed the course of history. Justices Moseneke and Marshall were born in South Africa, just 3 years apart in the 1940s, but they were born into separate worlds. As a Black child, Justice Moseneke's life was dominated by the inhumane regime of apartheid. As a white child, Justice Marshall's young life was not constrained by her race. Both grew up under South Africa's repressive regime of apartheid, which used the law to ensure that the majority Black population could not gain economic, political, or cultural power. This corrupt and unjust system informed each of our honorees' understanding of and commitment to justice. Justice Dikgang Moseneke, recipient of the 2020 Bolch Prize, was born in 1947 in Pretoria, South Africa. At age 15, he was arrested for opposing apartheid and sentenced to 10 years of hard labor in the prison rock quarry of Robben Island. While in prison, he earned degrees in English and political science and met many anti-apartheid leaders, including Nelson Mandela, who became a lifelong friend. After his release, Justice Moseneke earned a Bachelor of Laws from the University of South Africa and began practicing law in 1973. After apartheid finally ended in 1991, Justice Moseneke was appointed to help draft an interim constitution, the first step toward creating a new legal framework that would protect the equal rights of all citizens. In 1994, Justice Moseneke served as the deputy chair of the Independent Electoral Commission that oversaw the 10th first democratic elections in South Africa in which Nelson Mandela was overwhelmingly elected president. In 2001, Moseneke was appointed to the High Court of Pretoria. He was elevated to the nation's top court, the Constitutional Court of South Africa, in 2002, and he became Deputy Chief Justice of that court in 2005. He served there until he retired in 2016. As a Justice and Deputy Chief Justice of the South Africa Constitutional Court, Justice Moseneke wrote numerous influential opinions that helped clarify and strengthen democratic principles and the separation of powers among the branches of government in South Africa. Through his jurisprudence and his life work, Justice Moseneke offered a vision that transformed his country and provided inspiration to the world. Chief Justice Margaret H. Marshall, recipient of the 2021 Bolch Prize, was born and raised in Newcastle, South Africa. Her worldview changed when she came to the United States as a high school exchange student in 1962. For the first time, she saw freedom at work, open protests of racially unjust laws, and a powerful civil rights movement. She returned to South Africa, committed to challenging the unfairness and racial subjugation of Black South Africans. As an undergraduate student at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, she was elected president of the National Union of South African Students, at that time a leading anti-apartheid organization. She began attending the trials of political opponents of apartheid to bear witness to the injustices they faced. In 1968, Justice Marshall returned to the United States to pursue a master's degree at Harvard, and then went on to law school at Yale. Unable to return to South Africa, in 1978, she became a U.S. citizen. Her career in the law varied. She worked in private practice before becoming the first woman to serve as vice president and general counsel of Harvard University in 1992. In 1996, Governor Bill Weld named her an Associate Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, the oldest continuously serving appellate court in the Western Hemisphere. In 1999, she became the first woman to serve as Chief Justice of that court. Before retiring in 2010, Chief Justice Marshall wrote hundreds of opinions. One stands out: her 2003 decision in Goodridge versus Department of Public Health, holding that the Massachusetts Constitution prohibits the state from denying same-sex couples access to civil marriage. The opinion made Massachusetts the first state to legalize gay marriage and helped to transform attitudes and laws across the United States. It also led to the landmark 2015 U.S. Supreme Court decision, Obergefell v. Hodges, which extended the right to same-sex marriage to all U.S. citizens. For many of us, the idea of the rule of law seemed distant and disconnected, something to be discussed in courtrooms and in classrooms. But Chief Justice Marshall and Deputy Chief Justice Moseneke know that the rule of law is intimately intertwined with our day-to-day lives, and for that, we can all be grateful. Next, we will hear from David F. Levy, the director of the Bolch Judicial Institute, the former dean of Duke Law School, and also a former judge. Prior to coming to Duke, he was the chief United States District Judge for the Eastern District of California. David?
Thank you, Judy, and thank you so much for being our host today. It is a joy to be here with you to recognize two extraordinary judges, Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke, our 2020 Bolch Prize recipient, and Chief Justice Margaret Marshall, our 2021 Bolch Prize recipient. The Bolch Prize for the Rule of Law was created by Carl and Susan Bolch to recognize the lifetime achievements of individuals or organizations who create, promote, or preserve the rule of law in the United States and around the world. The first person to receive the prize was Supreme Court Justice Anthony M. Kennedy. At the prize ceremony in 2019, we gathered together in person at Duke to honor Justice Kennedy's many contributions to the rule of law. Justice Samuel Alito, a member of the Bolch Advisory Board, joined us and spoke so beautifully about his colleagues' dedication to the judicial craft, to the dignity of every individual, and to the teaching function of judges and justices. It was a special occasion, and today is no less special. Both of our recipients occupy an extraordinary place in the legal history of the past 50 years and more. Both were born in South Africa in the 1940s into the brutal system of apartheid, a system that depended for its survival upon harsh laws and severe punishments. And with the end of apartheid, Dikgang became one of the founders of the new nation, serving on the committee that drafted the interim constitution of 1993, as well as the Independent Electoral Commission that oversaw the first democratic elections in 1994. For these founding fathers, the task before them was clear. This new constitution would be, as Justice Moseneke has said, a never, never again constitution, a document that would prevent the atrocities of apartheid from ever happening again. It would protect democracy. It would protect the equality and dignity of all people. It would codify civil and human rights. It would light a path for a new era. No one is more deserving, more worthy of the Bolch Prize for the rule of law than Dikgang Moseneke, a modern-day founding father whose life and career, from the age of 15 to this very day, has been wholly focused on the creation and preservation of a free society governed by the rule of law. May I also say what a kind and thoughtful and intellectually lively person he is. My brief time with Dikgang at Duke, sadly cut short by the coronavirus, was inspiring and just so much fun. At the same time that Dikgang was growing up as a Black child in South Africa, in Pretoria, our 2021 Bolch Prize recipient was growing up as a white child in South Africa, in Newcastle, some 175 miles to the southeast of Pretoria. Justice Marshall is the first to say that her experience of apartheid was not at all comparable to Justice Moseneke's. That is obvious. But she too was deeply affected by apartheid, although not imprisoned. From her early days as a college student, she became active as an opponent of apartheid. She has said that her opposition to apartheid was sparked in part by her time in the United States as a high school student, where she witnessed and was inspired by the civil rights movement. Margie will not remember that I first met her in 1992, just after she had become the general counsel for Harvard University. My cousin, Dan Meltzer, a revered Harvard law professor, introduced us at lunch at a place in Cambridge, and he spoke so glowingly of her. I knew that she was also married to Tony Lewis, who was the distinguished journalist and scholar of the Supreme Court, and also a good friend of my father's. More recently, Margie and I have been in harness together as fellow members of the Council of the American Law Institute. Knowing her as well as I do, I can say emphatically that she is the gold standard for quality and character in everything that she does. As a justice, she wrote hundreds of opinions. Some of her most important opinions involved family law questions, for example, the rights of adoptive and surrogate parents. She took care to write her opinions so that lay people could understand them. As leader of the Massachusetts State Court system and president of the Conference of State Chief Justices, she worked to make the courts more accessible and more transparent. Her 2003 opinion in Goodridge versus Department of Public Health, addressing same-sex marriage under the Massachusetts Constitution, has become one of those opinions, like Brown versus Board of Education, that will go down in history and have huge continuing influence. Chief Justice Marshall wrote the majority opinion in Goodridge, making Massachusetts the first state to legalize same-sex marriage and initiating a sea change in the law and in public opinion in the United States that ultimately led to same-sex marriage becoming the law of the land in 2015. Chief Justice Marshall took care to ensure that the process by which Goodridge was decided would be understood to be fair. She worked closely with her colleagues who were in dissent to ensure that all opinions would be respectful, devoid of inflammatory rhetoric, and consistent with the dignity of the court, the importance of the subject, and the process. She knew that the court's work not only must be correct in its legal determination, but also must be understood and respected, even by those who would disagree. She personally withstood heavy criticism for the opinion, but as she shared with me last year when we spoke about it, the lesson she still carries from the experience of that groundbreaking case is that despite the criticism, even from her own governor, there was never a doubt in her mind that the decision would be upheld and implemented and followed. The independence of the courts and the respect accorded to their judgments by the other branches of government and by the people more generally are two critical aspects of the rule of law. We cannot take either for granted. The courts depend upon the confidence and the support of the people, particularly when the decisions are controversial. Judges build up this confidence and support through the day-to-day work of judging fairly and diligently, and doing so while respecting the dignity of every person appearing before the court. As a court leader and as a judge, as a mentor and teacher, Chief Justice Marshall has dedicated her life to doing this work and thereby has strengthened and advanced the rule of law. Chief Justice Marshall, Margie, what an honor it is to recognize you as the 2021 Bolch Prize recipient. Congratulations.
Thank you, David. And I have to say, it is such an honor for me to accept the Bolch Prize for the rule of law. And I am so honored to follow in the footsteps of the two earlier recipients of this prize. You know, as I thought about it, I thought how wise it was of Carl and Susan Bosch and how very generous of them to recognize that there's absolutely no better way to shore up the rule of law, which has been so important to me and I know has been important to Justice Moseneke, and to build the strong, independent judiciary than to create the institution that they have that will focus on the study of judges and judicial institutions, judicial training and education, and law reforms that strengthen and advance the administration of justice. And so first, I owe them a great debt of gratitude, but also to you and your colleagues, the dean at the law school, and your fantastic students and faculty who, like Dikgang, not only made me feel welcome, but sort of re-energized my brain and pushed me into directions that I hadn't thought about before. It is a great institution. Of course, my path, my life, has been very different from the path of the brilliant and courageous, and if I may say so, elegant justice with whom I share this occasion today. And I want to thank the Judicial Institute not only for honoring me, but for allowing my name to be linked with that of Justice Moseneke, whose contributions to establishing democracy and the rule of law in South Africa are just legion. So beyond saying thank you, I want to say what a profoundly meaningful occasion this is for me.
Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke was our 2020 prize winner, and we were not able to actually have the in-person ceremony that we had planned. And what a thrill it is to see you on the screen and to go ahead with our intended ceremony. You are the former Deputy Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court of South Africa. You were a visitor to Duke in 2020, and you made a huge impression. Not just on me, but on our students and our faculty who just loved and admire you so much. Congratulations, Justice Moseneke.
I'm deeply grateful for the way in which you You and the law school, as well as the Bolch Judicial Institute, hosted me when I was physically in Duke, or at Duke, and it was a very special privilege to be there, to interact with the law school, but with yourself as well as with so many other people. You got to a variety of functions. So thank you, and I look forward to this occasion.
Thank you, Justice Moseneke. It's been such a privilege to get to know you, and we're so pleased that it was possible to get the two of you here today, and our audience will discover very shortly how special this really is. Let us talk about your lives, your work in the judiciary and in public service, and your thoughts on the rule of law and how to protect it and advance it. Perhaps we can start with your connection to one another. We've referred to this just a little bit. You are both from South Africa, and you know each other. Justice Marshall, how do you know Justice Moseneke?
Well, David, it's one of those great things where his towering reputation preceded my meeting him. I left South Africa in 1968, and I'm now a United States citizen. I've lived in the United States for 50 years. And so my path, as I said, has been very different from Dikgang's. The South African Constitutional Court has emerged, of course, as one of the great constitutional courts, and I was very interested in its development. And even before he was appointed to the court, I knew several of the justices, including the first three Chief Justices, and I kept hearing this name, Dikgang Moseneke, Dikgang Moseneke. I knew the country needed him to be on the Constitutional Court, but he very wisely realized that there were other ways to build a democracy. And so I didn't have an opportunity to meet him in person until one of my second or third visits to South Africa, I think probably in 2009, 10, 11, something like that, when he was a member of the Constitutional Court.
And Justice Moseneke, when do you first recall knowing of Chief Justice Marshall?
Chief Justice Marshall, that has been so elegant. I've very little left to say, but let me tell you, Wits talked about you all the time. Wits is a university in South Africa, and was talk about her, and her being granted an honorary doctorate. And other justices, and our Chief Justice at the time, talked repeatedly about your role, your rise to the top of the judiciary in Massachusetts. And so we as South Africans became increasingly proud about one of our own becoming America's very own, and in an incredible performance. Always pressed on me. And ultimately, you came as a guest at our court. And there we met, Maggie Marshall, and it was just wonderful. And it's just wonderful to share this with you, a towering human being.
It is.
Thank you.
Had you heard of Margie as a student activist? I just wondered at that time or somewhat later, was that well known to you?
I heard of Margaret as an activist, of course, from Arthur and George Bezos and other activists who were at Wits at the time. But I wasn't there. I was in prison. I was so I came out as an ex-con to come and hear about Maggie and her activism and some of the judgments she had recently delivered, which were going to be pathfinders in our own situation in South Africa, particularly around gay rights. So yes, I came to know of it, but at the time when she was active, I was in prison. And that's more or less how apartheid worked, actually.
Once you were sentenced to prison on Robben Island, it's very hard to explain to Americans what that actually meant. And I'm sure you can talk about it far more movingly than I can. But for those of us who focused on the rule of law, you essentially disappeared into nothingness from the view of the outside world. I mean, no visitors, no access to a lawyer, so on and so forth. I mean, it really was quite an extraordinary sentence. And of course, you were what we would view as a child at the time. I mean, you were still in your teens when that happened to you. So to sit here today and to share this prize with you, for me, is a powerful example of what the human spirit can endure and rise to and contribute again. Because, of course, when you came out of prison, you certainly were not over the major hurdles that confronted any Black person in South Africa, to say nothing of somebody who wanted to pursue law as a profession. You were not permitted to be admitted to the bar initially. I don't want to jump ahead, David, but I also don't want Dikgang to sort of paper over. I mean, what a remarkable life he has led in developing a new democracy and establishing the rule of law in South Africa.
Could we talk about the early days in your time as a lawyer? You came out of prison and you had a decision to make. Many of your colleagues left the country and to pursue the fight from elsewhere. You decided to stay, be a lawyer, work against the system from within the system. And could you talk about that decision and how you view it today?
David, thanks for getting me there. But let me instantly say, there was no clear rationality in the decision as I made it. Came out of prison, I was 25 years, I had a law degree, and I knew that I had to study more to get an equivalent of a JD, which is an LLB. And that would qualify me to appear in the highest courts in the land. But somehow it was clear to me that you're going to have to come close to the belly of the beast. And if you want to really bring it down, distance won't always be the answer. So some of my colleagues and comrades left the country and got into exile and trained themselves as soldiers. I took a different decision, and I thought I actually would like to hold the hand of activists inside the country. And just thrilling in a bizarre way, you'd be close to danger, you'd be close to risk. You would be the ambulance of the revolution, if you like. As people fell, you're the one who would clear them out, who would defend them, and who would be exposed to, I might say, constant, if not abiding threat from the security arrangements and apparatus of South Africa. But that's the choice I made.
Thank you. Margie, you were a student opponent of apartheid and you left South Africa and you came to the United States, not with the intention of becoming a lawyer, but if I remember correctly, you came to the United States and you discovered that you probably could not go back to South Africa at least in the near term. You were not welcome there any longer. And you came to the United States during an important time in our history. It was the full flowering, if that's the right word, of the civil rights movement in this country and the Vietnam War protests. And looking back at that period, how did that affect your views on human rights and the rule of law? And what was it that made you want to become a lawyer?
That's a long and complex question, David, but let me just say that I agree so powerfully with Dikgang that the law in South Africa, the law of apartheid, was a powerful instrument of oppression. And I, of course, grew up as a white child. I was born there. My parents were born there, grandparents, etc. And I was educated and went through college as a white child. And I had immense privileges simply because of my race. And even as I grew up as a white child, I could not be blind to the consequences for the majority of South Africans, the vast majority of South Africans who were, of course, Black South Africans. But it was while I was visiting the United States as a high school exchange student that was the first time that I began to have an inkling that the rule of law, if properly understood, can be, as it were, an instrument of liberation. And that was because South Africa, Dikgang is correct, and he referred to the common law as one tiny little window through which very courageous advocates like himself could perhaps achieve something. Essentially, the law of apartheid was based on parliamentary law. There was no written constitution. There was no guarantee of fundamental rights. And almost as soon as an advocate like Dikgang had accomplished judicial victory, Parliament, white South Africa and white male Nationalist Party Parliament simply changed the law. And it was in the United States, as the civil rights movement was blossoming, as it were, but so was the second or third or fourth iteration of the gender equality movement. And I think I became swept up in that and began to look at my own life at the same time that I had to make a decision as to whether or not to return to South Africa, and for a variety of reasons decided to stay in the United States. I had never intended it to be a lifelong stay in the United States, but it became one because I decided to go to law school, and from that moment, the rule of law, the pursuit of the rule of law, has really shaped my life in a very different context from South Africa. But one of the most exciting things for me was when South Africa was liberated and when it established its new democratic government and when it established a constitutional court and when its constitutional court began to issue some of the most powerful and profound decisions of any constitutional court in the world. I felt as if I could now communicate with friends and colleagues in a way that I really hadn't been able to when I left 50 years before.
Let's come more to a little bit more to the present here. And Chief Justice Marshall, your 2003 opinion in Goodridge versus Department of Public Health was a groundbreaking decision on same-sex marriage. I think the first court, certainly the first state Supreme Court to rule on this in favor of same-sex marriage. And at the time, you said in your very humble way, which you continue to be today, that you didn't think the opinion was historic, but we know it is. And I'm just wondering how you view it today, now looking back, because that's now almost 20 years ago.
Yes, indeed. David, let me put it this way. I think what frankly caught me by surprise was how quickly this became a national and internationally known decision. And I think that is a function of modern technology. But on reflection, I have come to understand one thing. It was so clear to me that everything that the government had been telling me as a white child, as a white student, what Black South Africans were not capable of and could not do and could not run a democracy and could not be brilliant lawyers and could not be successful businessmen and could not be leading theorists was so patently wrong that I have often thought that when somebody tells me that the other is not capable of something, or the other is different, or the other does not belong as a member of our society, I think there's a deep-seated nerve that is triggered in my system that makes me think very, very deeply about whether that is the case. And that is, I think, that I was so profoundly understanding of that in South Africa even before I left.
Oh, that's so interesting and well stated. Justice Moseneke, did you become aware of this groundbreaking opinion in due course? I'm sure you did. And could you speak about that and also about the status of gay rights in South Africa under your new constitution?
Of course, yes, it was a groundbreaking judgment. We, in 1994, took a very firm decision to shut the door firmly on everything that was distasteful of our past. Our past was characterized by exclusion. The most obvious and known exclusion is the one based on race. In other words, white male toxicity being the power broker of society and therefore deciding all norms of what's right and wrong. Race is one layer. You can move and take it further at different layers of oppression, let alone the right of assembly, for instance, the right to express oneself freely on a political front. Think of any right that today is encrusted in our notions of human decency and the rule of law. Really, apartheid was a whole matrix of oppression. And therefore, the gay issue popped up quite early in our jurisprudence because the laws were inconsistent with Chapter 9, our equality provision, that made it quite plain that any discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation would be inconsistent with the law and to that extent invalid.
Thank you. Let's talk about some of the challenges facing modern democracies. One of them is the election process. And Dikgang, because of your enormous stature, you've been requested on several opportunities, during several elections, both in South Africa and elsewhere, to be an election monitor. And
David, let me start with a few fundamentals. Electoral democracy is premised on the notion that every individual has worth. And that worth is expressed by choosing representatives. When electoral hygiene disappears, all of the normative glue, that ethical glue gives way. And one of our politicians raised the question, which is often raised even in Africa, but now lately in the US, what is more potent? Justice or peace? Is there a time when you have to trade peace for electoral integrity? And this has posed challenges across the world, where people would pose a physical threat, a threat of anarchy, of dissonance, against insistence on electoral laws being properly and fully observed, and what I often call electoral hygiene. And I think increasingly as we move on, you're going to find that people are going to be more and more doubtful of elections and are going to try and find other means, which we see I have many examples that I bring to mind. But the better choice, I think, for virtually all nations is to go back and examine the electoral arrangements, how we make it all bare, transparent, inclusive, and trustworthy.
I'd like to ask each of you a kind of a two-part question and just let you talk about the experience of judging and your reflections on the rule of law, whatever they may be. And Margie, why don't we start with you?
David, I feel so privileged to have participated in this amazing experiment that the United States has undertaken, and to be able to sit as a justice. I say amazing experiment because we are a country, we are a whole continent almost. We have 320 million people. We have admitted immigrants from all over the world. And we have built a constitutional democracy which, at its core, relies on a strong and independent judiciary, which raises the point, as Dikgang and I and you have engaged in this conversation, you know, what are judges doing? What is the rule of law? For me, it has certain component parts, you know, equality, fairness, protection of fundamental rights, access to the courts by all. And of course, for me to have grown up in South Africa and to have come here as an immigrant with no parents, I came on my own, and to have been given this opportunity has been just a deeply moving experience. But we can never take any of this for granted in the United States, as Dikgang has made perfectly clear, and as we should all know and understand. And so I want to come back to why it is so important to have institutions like the Bolch Institute for the Rule of Law, and why what Carl and Susan Bolch have done is so important, because we simply cannot take anything for granted. So for them to focus on the judicial aspect at a moment, what any moment in our time, in our history, when we feel that there is a sort of weakening of some of the strong poles on which our democracy rests, and to sit on the oldest court in the United States with its own great constitution, the Massachusetts Constitution, and to have the federal Constitution, I think is an experience that is very hard to describe.
Thank you. Dikgang, reflections on judging and the rule of law.
Oh, Chief Justice Marshall has been right there, and I'm most grateful that she's made most of the points that I had hoped to make. But let's go. The privilege of an agreement by a nation that decisions of courts would be adhered to. It's a very important plank of the rule of law. Somebody must blow the whistle. Somebody must blow the referee. You don't have to agree with the referee's decision all the time to know that you need a referee. Each time we talk about the rule of law, we often talk about the higher, larger context, the superstructure of the democratic arrangements in a society. But the many years that I've been counsel and that I became a judge, there's so many disputes of people, of neighbors, of spouses, of children over a will. That and ask anybody who sat in courts. Those disputes require the law to step in and to restore the inequilibrium that is brought in by an invasion of rights or perceived invasion of rights. And over the years, I've built a certain level of sensitivity over the fact that the law serves a purpose much, much more than the big and powerful in society, exercising public power. That's one level and the most conspicuous level. But think about people invading a home, a private residence, or going out to kill people or rape people or dispossess people. And then judges come in and step in. And that's probably in the most fundamental sense, where the rule of law comes in to find that equilibrium that escapes us when we invade rights of others. And that was my privilege as a judge. But what was most impactful for me was how we actually could intervene in what I call ordinary lives and change them and restore the harm that might have incurred. And that's the simplest, I think, thing I want to say about the rule of law. And may it live long, because without it, Hobbes told us ages ago, isn't it? Life will be short, nasty, and brutish.
Yes, indeed. But one of the joys of contemporary life is being able to spend time with the two of you. And we could, for me, it would be a joy to go on with this conversation for a very long time, but we've imposed on you, and I do want to congratulate you both. You're remarkable people, remarkable judges. Your dedication to your craft and to the rule of law are extraordinary. You have life histories that are so interesting, and you're shining examples of what good judges can be. And we're so thankful to you. I know I speak on behalf of Duke Law School and the Carl and Susan Bolch in saying both congratulations and thank you for what you've done for the rule of law and the promise of equal justice for all. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, all of you, for inviting me to participate in this important ceremony for the Bolch Judicial Institute. It is an honor to know that Chief Justice Margaret Marshall of Massachusetts is a recipient of this wonderful award. We should remind ourselves, we should remind everyone in this magnificent democracy that freedom is always at risk. If a society forgets the importance of decency in debate, dignity in discourse, delight in discovering the truth, if it becomes fractious or hostile, then our ideals are in danger. And Chief Justice Marshall, you tell us by your career, by your accomplishments, and by your learning that we must not allow this to happen. Thank you very much and congratulations. Please continue to support the Bolch Institute in all of its wonderful work. Thank you very much.
Greetings. I am Mandi Samaya, a South African judge and president of the Supreme Court of Appeal of South Africa. I'm a 1990 graduate of Duke Law School's International LLM program. I am also a member of the Leadership Council of the Bolch Judicial Institute. And in that capacity, I am deeply honored and so pleased to congratulate fellow South Africans, Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke and Chief Justice Margaret H, who we still claim as our own despite her relocation to the US many decades ago upon receiving the Bolch Prize for the rule of law. This award has a very special significance for a country such as mine, which comes from a very dark and unjust past of legislated racial segregation and oppression. But today, as a result of the sacrifices and efforts of selfless advocates such as Justices Moseneke and Marshall, proudly holds a place in the family of nations as a democratic and open society, firmly rooted in the rule of law, with a strong and independent judiciary, and a government based on the will of the people, who are each equally protected by the law. The honor is a fitting recognition for both these distinguished jurists who have made an exceptional contribution to the strengthening of the human rights culture and the rule of law, and set such tremendous examples for their colleagues in judiciaries and societies around the world. May we all look to their dedication to the rule of law and to equality and dignity for all people as an inspiration and ideal that we must all emulate. Heartiest congratulations to them. Thank you.
Hello, we are Carl and Susan Bolch, the founders of the Bolch Judicial Institute at Duke Law School. Our mission is to better the human condition by studying and promoting the rule of law.
We are delighted to honor and congratulate Dikgang Moseneke, former Deputy Chief Justice of South Africa, the Bolch Prize for the Rule of Law winner for 2020, and Margaret Marshall, former Chief Justice of the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, our 2021 winner.
It has been a real pleasure to learn more about both of you. Your work consistently reflects that a strong, functioning rule of law relies upon an independent judiciary that can uphold and protect it.
We created the Bolch Judicial Institute because we believe that for any free society to flourish, it must be undergirded by the rule of law, the principle that all members of society, including those in government, are considered equally subject to publicly disclosed legal codes and processes. The rule of law creates a moral code of behavior. that the vast majority not only observe, but also deeply cherish.
An independent and fair judiciary is critical to protecting that code of behavior. We might be disappointed in a judge's decision, but at the same time, we must know that it was reached through a careful analysis of evidence without bias or favor to an individual, a business, or a government. The rule of law means that we can know that our laws are stronger than any one person, and our judges are impartial and responsible to the law and nothing else.
Justice Moseneke and Justice Marshall, you have served as shining examples of these ideals. We are grateful to you for your lifelong dedication to the rule of law. We hope this award helps to shine a very bright light on your leadership and your remarkable legacies. Thank you.
What a privilege it has been to be with you today and to honor two judges who have done so much to sustain and advance the rule of law. In learning more about Justice Dikgang Moseneke and Justice Margaret Marshall, I've been reminded that the rule of law is not something that can be achieved and then set on a pedestal to be admired from afar, or perhaps forgotten. It is an ideal that we must continually work to develop and safeguard through laws and systems that are always striving for justice, fairness, and equality for all people. As we shine a light on these two extraordinary judges, I hope we will all remember that we too play a role in protecting the rule of law by participating in the governance of our communities, by voting in elections, and by protecting the independence of our judiciary on which the impartial delivery of justice rests. And so we will end our celebration today with a special performance featuring talented voices from around the world, including the home cities of our honorees, reminding us that we all can make a difference. Here is Let Your Light Shine by Keb Mo and Jenny Yates, produced by the Boston Children's Chorus and featuring Bolch Prize of South Africa. Thank you for being with us today.
Step aside and let your light shine, your love show. It's a short ride down a long road. When the rains come, the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go.
You say you wanna get over. What are you gonna do? Watch the world go by in a corner all alone. And I know it's none of my business, but there's something I need to say. I see you, you'd start flying on your own. Step aside and let your light shine, let your love show. It's a short ride down a long road. When the rains come and the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go. This world is ready
and waiting
for you to break on through. And it's time to realize you're the only one like you. Step on up. Step into your greatness.
Step into your greatness.
Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid.
There's a place that you will rise up to. No one else can do what you do. Get out the way and let your light shine. Let your love show. It's a short ride down a long road. When the rains come and the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go. Let your light shine. Let your love show. It's a short ride down a long road. When the rains come and the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go. Let your love show. It's a short ride down a long road. When the rains come and the winds blow, let your light shine wherever you go.
Let your light shine, let your love show. It's a short ride down a long road.
And when the rain